I request you all to mute yourselves and let me continue with the lesson, which is, effect of light on the organisms right now. So there is a difference in the metabolism of plants basically and animals based on the temperatures that the, based on the light that they are exposed to. So again, different animals and plants live in different zones. If it is water, basically you have euphotic, dysphotic, and aphotic zone, and based on that, there are different metabolisms are there. And when it comes to the pigmentation, again, pigmentation of the skin is associated with light, and then you have what do you call it? Orientation of the light, basically, wherein you have a moment called as phototaxis. That is movement of the animals either towards the light or towards the away from the light. And you have photoperiodism, wherein it is measured in terms of the length of the day. You have the behavior and the metabolism of the animals based on the light that they are exposed to. So they are diurnal and nocturnal creatures. Basically, diurnalists, they are active during the day, rest during the night. Nocturnal, they rest during the day and are active during the night. So that is also again a basis on the circadian rhythm. And you have development and growth also, which is again influenced by the light that they are exposed to. So you have many fishes which are bottom dwellers, and you have nocturnal animals which have bigger eyes so as to see the kind of whatever prey or whatever is there in the darkness. And there is a phenomenon called as bioluminescence, which is also known as phosphorescence, wherein you have enzymes, luciferin acting on a substrate which is luciferase, because of which you have a luciferase complex which is formed, which is basically a production of light because of this particular chemical reaction, that is the enzymatic reaction that is taking place. So you have this phosphorescence or bioluminescence being exhibited by a certain bacteria or by certain organisms. So you have dinoflagellates, you have your glowworms and fireflies which exhibit this particular phenomenon. So again, when it comes to the effect of water, so you have photoperiodism. I have already explained that. Let us just go into water. So when it comes to the water, every organism for that matter is dependent upon water for life. It is because of the fresh water that is available. Only 10% of the earth has fresh water, 10 to 20% has fresh water. And this fresh water is the basis of life on earth. So it's the medium of aquatic environment, and at the same time, it is necessary for life. So aquatic animals, they have excess of water, so they need different kinds of concentration, hypotonic, basically, so that water can, since they're already exposed to water all the time, they need different kinds of salt or osmotic concentration, so that which is known as salinity again. So based on the tolerance of salinity, animals are classified as euryhaline or stenohaline. That is freshwater or salt water. And they live in different kinds of water, that is still water or running water. So you have pond, lake, so different kinds of adaptations to live in such kind of water. When it comes to terrestrial animals, again, in case they're living in desert areas, or they're living in where there is enough amount of water, based on that also you have adaptations that is taking place. So the skin, what do you call it, the animals that are living in desert or dry areas have a spiny skin. Some respire through the skin. In fact, for example, frogs, toads, certain reptiles and birds for that matter. When it comes to food, herbivores are dependent upon the water. Carnivores get the water from the blood which is there in the prey. So again, this case scenario, again, camel is one desert animal which can live for almost 11 days without drinking water. And their excreta, whatever, like, feces they or the fecal matter that they release, is also again either into solid uric acid or into pellets, so that there is water consumption and water preservation to the maximum. So all this is there, and these are the adaptations that is there according to the amount or the availability of water, which is the A, and all of these come under the abiotic factors. Now, when it comes to the population ecology, let us just go through that. Please give me a moment. I will share my screen. So population ecology is one wherein you can define population as something which is what do you call it? The word population or populace means people. So self-regulating system, you have your different kinds of system, what do you call it? Study of population is known as demography, and it is a study of the different kinds of organisms and the factors which help in its growth and survival. So again, you have to see that is the organism, how it is surviving within its own species, and the different kinds of biological attributes that are present, which include what exactly is a population, whether it is definite at that particular time, and does it have any kind of juveniles, for example, in the case of insects. So is it only larvae or the juveniles or the mature or the breeders or the different kinds of males and females that are present? What is the kind of different, whether there are different races of that particular insect that are present? All of this is made up of the population, which can vary according to the time that is present. And usually the species in a population exhibit similar characters during normal circumstances. And they face changes according to the environment that they are exposed to. And so there is a lot of differentiation, and then they try to maintain and conserve themselves in that particular environment that is present. What are the different unique attributes that are present at the group level and at the whether there is any kind of the population density and the growth that is there. When it comes to the density of a population, you can say that the total number of individuals in a unit area in a volume at that particular given time is known as the density of the population. For example, say 100 trees per 1 hectare, or in 1 ml or one in ml of water, you have around 20,000 items, or around 100 pounds. We are looking at the weight over here, 100 pounds of fish per 1 acre of water. So again, it varies according to the time number, and then where is it exactly located, and the size of the area that is considered. So when you see the density is the total number of species within a natural habitat that is present. So the page number is 38, page number 38 that we are following. When it comes to the growth of population, I'll just have. Please give me one moment if you don't. So it depends upon the character of the population, the density of it, how it is dispersed. And am I audible? Let me see. Yes, right, sure. Sorry. Survivorship curves and the different kinds of growth. So genetics, ecology, population size, which is usually denoted by N, is the number of the population or individual organisms in the population. So you have crude birth rate, crude death rate, immigration and emigration. When it comes to natality, it's the birth rate, B, that is number of births per unit time per average population. Mortality is the number of deaths in that particular population, again per unit time in an average population. Immigration is number of organisms moving into a particular area occupied by a population. And emigration is number of organisms which are moving out of that particular area. And this factors that increase the population are natality, that is through reproduction, and immigration. For example, whenever a different kind of species comes to a particular area, then that is when you have immigration. And factors reducing the population size, so you have mortality, which is the death rate from any source, that is predation, or emigration, because of which population of the organisms move to another area altogether, because of which there is a reduction in the population. So this is how it takes place. So births, immigration, so population size increases. Death and emigration, population size decreases. Change, again you can see, this is the chart that you can just have a look at. Right. So what are the parameters that affect the size or density of a population? So density is the population per square kilometer. So this is how it is. We are a very dense nation with a lot of people per square kilometer. So this is necessary for the ecologists to take place. And based on the movement of the organisms, you have size, which are small animals or plants, usually more abundant than the large animals or plants. And measurement of density, you have two methods, that is total count and sampling method. We'll just have a look at it. And so you have direct counting, and then at the same time, for example, this is the human population census. And then you have the sampling methods, which are done by plot-based or capture-based methods. So usually seen for plant studies. Total population is average number per quadrat or into total area per area of quadratic. So you have another method, which is mark recapture method. Then you have population dispersion. So you have three types, that is random, uniform, or clumped. Clumped, where individuals are present in patches. Again, reasons are some areas of habitat are suitable for the others, basically wherever there is water. For example, if there is a water body, then you will have different it is more densely populated. And then clumped as such, in example is this wolves, and living in groups, basically, because of which it has certain benefits, such as hunting is easier, and protection and caring for young is taking place. So because of which wolves live in such kind of clumps. Uniform dispersion is because of the availability of water, sunlight, or nutrients for basically. So example, as seen in different kinds of animals, and some desert animals. And uniform you can see in penguin population, basically. So there is spacing maintained by because they are territorially very possessive of their space. When it comes to random dispersion, you have they are just basically it's not very common. Lone animals kind of exhibit this kind of phenomenon, in fact. And then, so example is dandelions. This is again based on the kind of pollination. Wherever it gets pollinated and it gets blown off, there it just starts growing up. So the factors that affect the distribution are density dependent and density independent. You can just see. So floods, hurricanes, all these reasons come under the density independent reason. Whereas distribution is based on density dependent, is based on the competition, the predation, parasitism, and the infectious diseases. So demography is the study of the vital statistics, that is what is necessary for the population to thrive in a particular area and how it changes over the period of time. So you have two particular strata or points over here, which is age structure in the population sex ratio. So you have the primary, that is the ratio of males to females in a population, which is again primary, secondary, and tertiary. So this is one important parameter. Second thing is the age structure or the age distribution. So again, you have the young population, and this is the age structure diagram. Basically, if it is the pre-reproductive ages is more, and the reproductive ages is around only that's around 15 to 44. Reproductive ages is around 45 and up. So based on this, you have different kinds of age pyramids. In fact, you have the young population, stable, and the declining population. Based on that, you have the pyramid, you have the bell structure, and then you have the um, um, stable structure, inverted bell structure, basically. So you can just have a look into your textbook also. They've just given you the demography for the US, in fact. But instead over here, you can just see. So stable or the young population, which is growing, more number of pyramid, pre-reproductive age, because of which you have the pyramid structure. And if it is a stable population, you have the urn-shaped structure, which is the bell-shaped structure, wherein you have a stable structure. Whereas if it's a declining population with more amount of post-reproductive age groups, then you have a bell, urn-shaped pyramid, indicating increased number of middle to old age than young, that is pre or post, because of which there is a decreased number of decrease in the population. So you also have biotic and environmental resistance that is shown by different kinds of species. So this is the power of the population to increase in number whenever the age-sex ratio or the age ratio is stable and the environmental conditions are optimal. So again, we have the survivalship curves over here. So type 1, type 2, and type 3 survivalship curves, wherein you have the characterized by high survival in early and middle life, followed by rapid decline in the survivalship in the later life. So this is there in type 1. And then you have type 2, wherein it is stable, for example, intermediate between type 1, type 3. So roughly constant mortality rate. Type 3 is what happens is, low rate of death during later stages than compared to the early stages. So when they are young, they experience a high rate of mortality, whereas when they become relatively older, the rate of mortality decreases. So this is about the population curves, basically. So we also have population fluctuation, J-shaped and S-shaped, wherein and with the variation or the stable is the stability factor, is the carrying capacity that is present. So you have different kinds of mathematical formulas and logistic, the growth rates. We have this in the book. You can just see the J-shaped and the S-shaped curves, basically. So wherein, the growth rate of the population accelerates in the unrestricted growth, whereas in the restricted growth, it is the S-shaped curve, wherein acceleration of population up to a certain point reaches a maximum point of growth, that is K, that is the carrying capacity K. Maximum point of growth is K by 2. Then slowly the population rate declines or slowly comes down. So this is about the population fluctuation that we get to see. When it comes to the regulation of population, then we have constant birth rate through the time, with factors which are limiting, which are food diseases. So if it is not there, then you'll have an exponential growth. Again, the birth rate alone controls such kind of population. Whereas in exponential growth, you have continuous population, unlimited environment. So you have an exponential model over here, wherein population size increases, rate of population increases or gets larger. So this is about the growth rate and the population. So when it comes to the regulation of population, so you have the physical components such as weather, water currents, and you have availability of food. All of these are regulation of the population. In the case of yes, who is this? All right. So anyway, so populations always try to evolve or do try to self-regulate. So there are some density independent factors that are there, which are independent of the size of the population, or extrinsic factors which help in regulation of the population. So they include some of the density dependent factors are competition, reproduction, disease, death, emigration. All of these are important in playing a role in controlling the population, right? So when it comes to home range and territoriality also, some based on the kind of entry of the species into their area, they that also controls the the population basically. So you have certain organisms which actively defend their particular territory. So this is done in social organisms such as bees, ants, and then breeding pair by single individual, all of these. So return of the animal to its territory is known as homing, which is familiar among the birds and many species of insects and certain crustaceans. You have K and R selection also. This is again based on the kind of population which is going to live. So R is per capita rate of increase, and this is not exactly favored. So less competition. K selected species have more favorability when it comes to the different kind of lifespan, death rate, then different kind of offspring. So you have this, you can just have a look at it, ideal population which is there. So R selected are opportunistic, and K selected are equilibrium in population. So we would like to have K selection. So that is what is there. So human growth, we is also just most of the human population is presently in Asia. So this is the kind of density wherein, wherever there is yellow, you have around 10 to 100 people per kilometer. Whereas when it is red in color, you have more than 100 people per kilometer. That is how the density of the population is. Now let us just say, check into community structure. So this is general ecology. Just give me a minute. Let me open that particular slide. Let me share. Right. Ecosystem. So when it comes to the ecosystem and the community, we are looking at different kinds of species diversity and the dominance that is present. Basically, in a community, you have different kinds of populations present, and then you have different kinds of factors that are influencing the population. So let us just have a look at it. So when it comes to species diversity and the populations that are present, it is again dependent upon the amount, the place that the population is present. Is it grassland, or is it pond community, or is it terrestrial community, or desert community? So diversity of the species is based on that. So over here again, we have in a community, the size matters. So let us just have a look at it. So you have different kinds of trophic structures also over here. So please give me a moment. Yes. So we have seen the inorganics, abiotic or the non-living components. Now we are looking at the biotic or the living components, over which we have size, wherein different communities cover large areas that are present. And you have different kinds of trophic structures which help in the movement of the food or the energy through different levels. So usually primary, and that is the producers, the consumers, and the decomposers. And this is again depending upon the number of and the variety of the species that are present. So we have something called as the ecological niche. So these are the heterotrophs that are present all over. autotrophs and primary predators or herbivores and the secondary predators. And then we have the food chains and the food web. Please give me a minute. Yes. So you can just look at it. And then we have the number and the variety of species that are present, which actually help in maintaining a balance between the producers and the consumers. When it comes to an ecological niche, the functional or the position of a particular species in the community is known as the ecological niche that it occupies. So habitat of a person is the address of that particular person, and the niche is his or her profession or the job that they do. So example is Notonecta and Corixa. They live in the same habitat, but they have different trophic niches. So Notonecta is a predator, whereas Corixa feeds on the decaying vegetation. But they stay in the same environment that is present. So again, there is a lot of overlapping in the niches that are present. And then we have something called as the community stability, wherein you have tropical rainforests and coral reefs that are being stable, constant population over the time. And example is tundra you have, wherein you have the environmental fluctuations that is present. So this again is dependent upon the microenvironment and the community diversity. We also have the ecotone and the edge effect, wherein you have a junction or a zone that is present for two or more communities, which is known as ecotone. So example is border between grassland and forests. They can be big or small for that matter. And then you have something called as the edge effect, wherein you have a lot of species diversity and variety, which is known as there is an increase of species diversity and variety in these particular areas, which is known as the edge effect. So this is one thing, which is the ecotone and the edge effect. When it comes to factor compensation and ecotypes, you have adaptations to different physical environment that is present. That is, it can be light, temperature, water amount, oxygen. So this is known as factor compensation. Occurs in both species and the community levels. Example is jellyfish Aurelia, distributed in both warm and cold waters. And when it comes to the organisms in warm waters, they in warm waters, that is in the southern pole or population, they cannot swim fast. Whereas those organisms that are present in the warm waters can swim a little faster. So that is how it is. And when it comes to the community stratification, we have vertical stratification, we have horizontal stratification, and the temporal stratification. Let me just see whether this is present or not. Food web, food chain. This is all there for us in the next chapter. So I will just play this. Let it be. So when it comes to the vertical stratification, again, you have three strata, that is subterranean and the floor and the herbaceous. And then based on that, you have different kinds of organisms living in there. When it comes to the horizontal stratification, again, community is divided into different territories, male species, and defense by the different based on the gender and the interaction among the birds. And when it comes to the temporal stratification, different biotic communities show different stratification, whether they are nocturnal, whether they are diurnal, or there is a third group that is twiling. So transition between morning and evening, that is the twilight time. Such birds are the flycatchers, the warblers. So these are active during the twilight time. So this is all we have read about in the case of ecological succession and ecology. Basically, we have seen the what do you call it? In the case of succession, basically there is a shift in the composition of the community and the species, and it is changing in an orderly way. It's possible to see what kind of community is present based on the existing one, and each of the community changes is in a direction, and each succeeding community, whatever is there, is usually more the climax type, at least in the physical characteristics. And you have a community which is the climax community based on the kind of environmental changes that are present. So this is all about our lesson. When it comes to the energy flow in the ecosystem, again, Like I told you, you have solar energy being produced, and the phototrophs make the energy, that is these, and these are the producers. And we have the food chain basically. You have the, let me just show you. Yes, this is the energy flow diagram. Again, we have seen it quite a number of times. So this is a trophic pyramid or a community food web basically, with ecological relationships that are being followed over here. So we have pyramid of numbers, pyramid of biomass, and pyramid of energy. And we have the roles of decomposers and the producers or the reducers for that matter. And when it comes to the different kinds of food chain that is present, we have the grazing food chain, we have the detritus food chain, and we have the food webs also. And we have the parasitic food chain also. In a grazing food chain, we get to see that this starts with the producers, then goes to the primary consumers, and you have the climax consumers. So this is wherein energy flows from producers to consumers, and only 20 to 30% of the net primary production is used as the food. Rest is passed into the soil as waste. And when it comes to the detritus food chain, we get to see that in this detritus food chain, we have a transfer of energy from organic matter into microorganisms and then into detrivores or the decomposers. So these are the decomposers. So this is how it is taking place, and this is something which is continuous. So grazing food chain, energy is stored in the tissue of the living beings. Detritus food chain, energy is stored outside the organism. And then you have the parasitic food chain, wherein it starts from the larger organism and then stops with the smaller organism without the killing, as in the case of the predators. So you have green plants, herbivores, then different number of parasites based on what they want, whether it is food or whether it is shelter. So again, food chains are directional. They, which with the flow of energy, and it starts with the basal species and then ends with the consumer species. When it comes to the food web, in the food web, you have food webs or food cycles wherein which are interdependent in nature. They're also known as consumer resources. So every food web has good resources of food shared by different animals at different levels for that matter. So let us just see. Yes. So always you can see that it is of two categories, that is the autotrophs and the heterotrophs. We do not want anything else. We just want auto and hetero, producers and consumers. So based on that, you have a very good example of the food web over here. You can see many interactions are there which is being followed. And simplified illustration is you have primary, secondary, tertiary carnivores which are eating the primary, secondary carnivores for that matter, the tertiary ones, because of which there is energy exchange taking place. So this is all about the food web that is there. And then when it comes to the ecological pyramids, let us just have a look at it. You have again primary, secondary, and the decomposers which are present in all the levels. So when it comes to the energy flow, again solar energy producers, consumers to decomposers, and it is unidirectional in nature and decrease in the overall energy level as the trophic level is increasing. So more energy is at the primary level, least energy is at the tertiary or the level. So when it comes to the numbers, ecological pyramids, you have the primary, secondary, and the tertiary consumers. And then we have the ecological pyramids where the producer is at the base and the final consumer is at the apex. So you have the pyramid of numbers, pyramid of biomass, and pyramid of energy. So in the pyramid of numbers, you can see that a layer of so it's a 4-level pyramid. You have again the same thing over here. You can see primary consumers, then consumers, and primary, secondary, tertiary, and these are the producers that are present. And you have an inverted pyramid in some ecosystems wherein the hyperparasites, the producers are present, which are the least number that is present, and the herbivores, the parasites and the hyperparasites are the most. So this is one inverted pyramid example. Again, you have pyramid of biomass, wherein total mass of the organisms is at each ecosystem or each trophic level. So for example, pyramid of biomass, photosynthetic microorganisms are plants that are present. Then you have bacteria, protozoans, semi-microscopic multicellular organisms, small fish and large fish. That is the example of pyramid of biomass. When it comes to the pyramid of energy, again, you have the rainforest or the producers, and you have the insect larvae or the smaller insects, which are the primary consumers. And then you have the secondary consumers, which are the rats and the snakes, and the owls or the eagles or the different kinds of birds, which are the tertiary or the apex consumers. So this is one thing. And we also have pyramid of productivity, wherein the total amount of energy present at each trophic. This is a trophic level, for example. This is one trophic level, second one, third one, in that manner. So total amount of energy that is present in each trophic level, plus, or we are going to even look at the loss of energy at each trophic level. So this is again based on the Lindman's 10% law, which states that only 10% in each trophic level goes on to the next level altogether. So rest is lost. Whatever amount of energy is there is lost either by respiration, hunting, and other activities that is present, which is known as biomagnification. So what are the functions of these ecological pyramids? You can see that it shows the feeding pattern, at the same time how they are what is the kind of energy transfer that is taking place, the efficiency of it, and at the same time it can be worsened over the years because of population, human influence, so overhunting, for example, or damage to their ecosystem. And these are the ones that you can learn about a species through the population pyramid that is present. So what are the limitations of the ecological pyramid? We do not see whether two species belong to two or more trophic levels. So for example, a bear is a herbivore, at the same time it's a carnivore as well. So it belongs to two different trophic levels. And assumption is of a simple food chain that we are looking at, which is not going to take place at all. So we have, there is no provision for a food web to be accommodated. And at the same time, we do not take place, or we have not given a strata for the saprophytes that live on the decaying matter, because they are present at every role at there is decay or death in every trophic level, and the organisms that live on these, that is the saprophytes, are not given a particular ecological position. So this is all about energy and ecosystem. So we have seen about the different kinds of biotic and abiotic factors. And then we have seen how the ecosystem and the food chains and the food webs are dependent or interdependent for that matter. And now I'm just going to have to look at another one, which is animal associations. Let me just share my screen with you. So when it comes to the animal associations, we have, or we learn about the interrelationship between different organisms that is present. So every organism is associated with two different or different kinds of what do you call it, organisms that are present. You either have positive or negative control of the association. So there is an interrelationship which is direct or indirect based on the kind of association of the particular species. So we have symbiosis, commensalism, parasitism, natural and artificial selection, and then we have the prey and the predator relationship. So when it comes to the positive, the negative or the neutral association that is there based on the impact of the relationship between the two different species, we have mutualism, commensalism, and negative effect is the parasitism, predator prey host, and all of those. We'll just have a look at it. And it can be even interspecific and intraspecific. Symbiosis is partnership between two different organisms for the sake of a mutual benefit. So example is, again, they have given mollusca and Trichadna species, and the Hippolpus species, wherein Tridacna is a giant mollusk present in coral reefs, and this has different kinds of zooxanthellae on the outer tissues, which helps in the removal of waste products. In turn, the different clams get nourishment by digesting their algae. So there is food involved and at the same time removal of waste products. When it comes to the mutualism, you get to see that in mutualism, two different organisms are present and they try to live together. So this mutualism may be obligatory or facultative, or in the obligatory or the continuous mutualism, individuals cannot live without each other. So in this, you have example of mutualism is the Ocellaris clownfish, along with which live among the tentacles of different kinds of sea anemone. So clownfish and sea anemone is one example. And at the same time, you have bryozoans, which are crustaceans, and hermit crabs that are living, bryozoans and hermit crabs. So this bryozoan is able to live through with or without the crab that is present basically. So you have both two types, that is facultative and the obligative mutualism. Example, that is what I have given. In obligate is hermit crab and sea anemone, or so this is one thing. Outer shell of the surface of the shell has the sea anemone for that matter. That is the Adam species. And hermit crab is protected from the enemies. And sea anemone derives the food from the hermit crab. Whereas facultative example is crocodile and the crocodile bird, that is the Pluvialis aegyptus. This bird, crocodile bird, actually removes the leeches from the teeth of the crocodile. So it still can live. Both of them are benefited because there is a nutritional need over here, but they can live without each other as well. In the case of commensalism, you have interaction between two different organisms. One partner is benefited. The other partner is neither benefited nor it is harmed. So example is, what do you call it? Again, the purpose is food, space, shelter, defense, transport. So you have ecto as well as endo commensals that are present. Whereas the commensalism, ecto means inside the host species, and endo means inside the host species, ecto means outside the host species. So when it comes to the two types and the level of association, you have the permanent commensals and the temporary commensals. So permanent is wherein, we will just have a look at it in some time. Whereas for temporary, it is like, the animals are there only for some time. Example, suckerfish and shark. And a suckerfish is found as attached to the dorsal sucker of the shark, in fact. And you have the decapod crustacean, that is Polyonyx, which lives with Chaetopteris. So food, water, and oxygen is available, and it helps in the worms parapodia. Portuguese man of war and fish. Location of the commensal on the host species. It can be either ecto or endo. So parasitism is one example wherein you have the parasite benefiting at the expense of the host. So it is harming the host. Over here, mosquitoes are parasite for that matter. So it actually harms the host. And you have temporary parasites such as the lamprey and the marine fish. So lamprey sucks the blood from the larger fish, then leaves the host. So they are known as facultative parasites. So Glochidium larva attaches to the muscle and the fish, in fact, and then it attains leads a permanent site. Then you have the permanent parasites, which are either phyto or zooparasites based on the location that they are present. And they need the host for living altogether. Example is trypanosoma and and then you have intercellular parasites. You have a lot of parasites, tapeworms, the worm family, all of them are parasites, in fact. And then they have to live within the host, to survive, in fact. Endoparasites are either intracellular and intercellular based on their location. If they're within the cell, they are known as intracellular. If they're outside the cell, they are known as intercellular. So examples of intercellular are the flukes which are present in different for example, the liver fluke, the lung fluke, they're present in spaces in between the liver cells. Whereas intracellular parasites such as trypanosoma, then you have your mosquito, plasmodium, they are present inside the cell. Another example is the male anglerfish attached to the larger sized female fish, Antenarius hispidis. So this is the attachment of the male to the female to get nourishment as well as reproduction. So this is known as sexual parasitism. When it comes to predation, you have one animal which is known as the predator, one animal which is known as the prey. So the predator lives on the prey basically. When it comes to competition, I want to teach. So when it comes to the competition, again, you have two types, intraspecific and interspecific competition. So between individuals of the same species, so it is known as intraspecific competition. When it is in between different kinds of species, then you have, it is known as interspecific competition. For example, the fishes, they eat the mosquito larvae. The carnivores feed on the herbivores. So you have competition over here, but different again, interspecific. We have something called as the antagonism. We'll just have a look at it as well. In antagonism, both the members of the species, different species that are involved, are harmed. So that is inclusive of amensalism, antibiosis, parasitism, predation, competition. All of this is wherein you have a negative effect on both the individuals that are from the different species that is present. So we have examples of parasitism also that is given. So we have seen what competition is, basically intraspecific and interspecific. Now we'll have a look at what predation is also. You have either scavenging, which is already on the dead, and you have what do you call it? Then you have the predation on the herbivores, and you have the parasitism, which is the micropredation. So what is the type of relationship and the effect of relationship? Let us just see. In mutualism, there is no effect on both the species, A or B for that matter. So it neither affects nor harms the others. Mutualism is favorable to both. Commensalism is favorable to one species, whereas it is not neither harming or the beneficial to the host. Exploitation or parasitism is beneficial to one species, harmful to the host. Predation is beneficial to one particular predator and harmful to the prey. Competition is harmful to both species at some point or the other. So this is all about the predation and the competition for that matter. So the relationship between the same species are known as intraspecific relationship. Different species is known as interspecific relationship. And at the same time, you have the symbiosis, which is a physical attachment, beneficial to both, in fact. So you have either conjunctive symbiosis and disjunctive symbiosis. Commensalism, no dependence and beneficial to both. And then you have a competition, which is again interaction between organisms or species, wherein both species are harmed. Predation, prey, you have one species which is beneficial and one species which is harmed. Then we have something which is the ecological adaptations that are present. So you have different kinds of adaptation for different kinds of animals that are present. Every animal tries to live in an environment which is comfortable or suitable for that particular creature. So you have different kinds of adaptations which include the ecological ones, which is aquatic, terrestrial, and volant adaptations. So in the case of adaptations, again, you have different types of adaptations that are present. So you have structural adaptations, physiological adaptations, and behavioral adaptations that are present. So in this, again, you have aquatic. In this, what will happen is, in the structural adaptation, special body parts help to survive, so that includes the skin color, shape, and the body covering. Whereas physiological adaptations, you have venom, slime, trying to maintain a constant body temperature. Whereas behavioral adaptations, you have, either it becoming nocturnal or diurnal, or, trying to camouflage along with its surroundings, all of this. And based on the habitat, again, it can be categorized into three fundamental types, which is aquatic, terrestrial, and volant. Volant means flying. So this is again divided into different kinds of subtypes that are present. So aquatic adaptation is again based on the water that they live in. Either it is brackish water, seawater, or freshwater. So freshwater organisms have certain adaptations which help in draining the water that is present, excess of water that is present inside the body. And then they should also have certain structures which help in uh, taking the salt from the water. Marine organisms have or live in hypertonic surroundings, that is the sea. So they have mechanism to take in only freshwater molecules and excrete the excess amount of salt that comes in with the water intake. So aquatic plants either have rooted, submerged roots, or submerged rooted plants, etc., need some amount of photosynthesis that can take place. So they have certain kinds of adaptations. Aquatic animals which are benthic in nature, that is, which are present on the bottom, or the pelagic that is occurring in the water body itself, again either can live have certain adaptations. And those that can live partially or permanently in water also have specialized features that are present for them to live in that particular surroundings. So certain adaptations are, for example, fishes. So fishes have a streamlined spindle shaped body. Head is elongated, then small, and this is one thing. And in case of marine animals, excessively large body is there because of the buoyancy of the salt water. They have huge bodies. That is why whales are the largest mammals that are present and largest animals that are, or living creatures that are ever present. Locomotion and balance also is dependent and different on different aquatic animals. So you have different kinds of fins, limbs that are turned into paddles in the case of turtles and tortoises, and you have webbed feet. And skin is usually moist and with a lot of mucus glands present, because of which it is slippery. And you have dermal scales, and then you have very much reduced hair present, and you have a fatty layer in the case of whales, which is known as blubber, which helps in insulin. At the same time, fat floats on water, because of which it helps in floating. And then they are capable of using the dissolved oxygen present inside the water. So they have a very well equipped gills, and they have an air bladder also that is functional, especially when it has to have some air for coming onto the surface. And they have lateral lines, that is the whole body is streamlined, and whole length is having a neuromast, and you have pressure receptors, so that they know they can adapt themselves to different ranges of pressure inside the water. So this is about the aquatic adaptation. When it comes to the terrestrial adaptations, we have different kinds of animals living in very diverse conditions. So you have a cylindrical, spindle-shaped or fusiform in the case of subterranean animals, or if at all they are living as parasites. And so head is small, tapers anteriorly, and then at the same time neck and pinnae are very much reduced in the case of either parasites or subterranean animals. Eyes are either small and non-functional. This is the fossorial adaptation. Limbs are small and and they are short and strong. Paws and stout is again with long claw and long claws, and very good for digging. And in case of a mole cricket, you have a Gryolotalpa. So four legs are actually modified to dig. So for cursorial, that is running adaptation, these are the animals that are present in grasslands. They include the zebras, the deer, the horses, most of them. So what happens is neck is reduced, streamlined body, air resistance will not be much while running, and they have a cannon bone, and they become fused to form a cannon bone. In fact, the bones of the palms, and then the shank bone and the forearm bone are totally reduced, and then you have the radius and the tibia, all of which elongated, so that the length of the stride is increased. So movement of the limbs is again restricted to fore and aft plane. When it comes to tree living or arboreal adaptation, you have chest, girdle, ribs, limbs which are all very strong. Feet and hands become, opposable. Prehensile, that is catching with different kinds of moving opposable digits in the case of marsupials and primates. Digits are either 3 or 2 digits present with syndactylely as in the case of chameleon. And you have others so that it can facilitate moving around in the trees. And the tail becomes a prehensile in the case of monkeys and the chameleon. So this is the adaptations that are there so far. The next class I will deal with the desert adaptation, the different kinds of protective adaptation, and for flying, that is the volant adaptation. Thank you so much.